Welcome to the Underground Dhamma Podcast, Episode 7. I'm happy to have everyone here today, and my name is Juan, and I'm joined with my co-host, Joana. Hi, Joana.
Hi.
Hello. Yes, Joana, I've been wanting to ask you, I want everyone to hear this. The sound of two hands is, two hands clapping make a sound. What is the sound of one hand clapping?
It is infinite.
That's right. That's right. We were discussing koans recently, and I wanted to know if Joanna knew what a koan was, and she gave me the perfect way of saying that koan that Hakuin used about the sound of one hand clapping. And then I asked her what would she answer, and after a little bit, she answered, "Sound is infinite." And I thought that was the perfect answer. So thank you, Joanna, for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
What made you say that?
Well, I read it somewhere online. I think I was on LinkedIn, and this lady was talking about mindfulness, and then she started talking about koans. Oh, poetry, and then poetry written by Zen masters, and then she started talking about koans, and then she read that koan, but there was no answer. So I thought about it, and then I remember I read that koan after we had spoken about after we had discussed Alan Watts' essay on what was the title of the essay again?
A Lecture on Zen.
Yes. So it was after that I had read that koan, and I remembered how Alan Watts would say that the answers to koans are not, you cannot answer a koan with the normal way of thought. You have to think of it differently, kind of like creatively, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So instead of answering it rationally, which would have been, that's not possible, one hand cannot clap.
Yeah.
It was kind of like I had to step back and look at the ideas. And then I realized that when two hands clap, it's a form of communication. And if one hand, although it may not clap by itself, you can communicate in an infinite number of ways with one hand. So that's how I got to my answer.
Yeah, I thought that was really nice. I had a very pleasant smile when you said that, and so I was very pleased with your answer, because you're right. Most people are going to answer logically or rationally, or they're going to try to figure out how to act weird and off the cuff. But that was natural. There was no forcing that answer, and it's true. We think about quantum physics. They talk about superposition. It's like every possibility is happening at the same time. Where is a subatomic particle when we're not looking? It's everywhere and nowhere. It's infinite. So I like that. And yeah, as soon as we categorize something, we lock it into space and time, and it's no longer infinite. That's why we can't answer rationally. Although we love reason here on this podcast.
Yeah, it's like if the Zen masters, they wanted you to step outside of that way of thinking, that way where you use reason. And I feel like the reason why is because the Zen masters wanted you to think outside the box, right?
Yeah, because it's the box that's keeping you. The box is the chain, pretty much, right?
It's what keeps you limited.
Yes.
Would you say the box is like the matrix?
Yeah, that's perfect. We can say that. It's a matrix of ideas that is keeping us locked here.
Locked in this way of thought. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's like it's like if the box in the matrix, it's like all the social norms or all the restrictions that society puts on into our minds and make us believe that, you know, you can't do, there's so much that's not possible, when in reality actually anything is possible.
That's right. Anything is possible. That's why it's infinite. And that was perfect. I think I'm gonna start doing that, John. I think I'm gonna start giving you just quans at the start of the episode,
No.
every episode. So just get ready. Get ready by not getting ready.
I gotta stay on my feet.
Yes, that's right. That's right. All right. So we are in episode 7. Can you believe we're this many episodes in?
Yeah, I can.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. I mean, it's not that I didn't expect it, but it's also nice to be here too. It's nice to see what we have talked about. It's nice to see that, there's people out there that like it, and we got to interview our friend and teacher Bhante Bihari last episode, which that was nice.
Yeah, that was nice.
Big shout out to him. He's like, he's my best friend, I would say. And what better best friend to have than a Buddhist monk, right? A real Kalyana Mita, as well as yourself. But it was nice to interview him. And that kind of, it might lead us in a direction where now, I was thinking we can have, we could have our off the cuff, go with the flow episodes. And then we can also have like our interview episodes. We get to interview all the people we think are interesting. And then maybe we can have our sutta episodes, where we dive into a sutta.
I think that sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, I like that. But today, I think today is like a go with the flow episode, which that doesn't mean that we have no idea what we're going to do. It just means that we're going to do it spontaneously. So spontaneously meaning we have an idea, but we don't know how it's going to go. So today, I wanted to talk about our late teacher, the most venerable, supernormal Dr. Bhante Punnaji. He was the first person to talk about the teachings of the Buddha, like literally the words of the Buddha, where it had tremendous, extraordinary meaning, like as if a Buddha actually would say it. We hear the teachings of the Buddha, we hear all the lists, the Four Noble Truths, the 5 aggregates, the Eightfold Way, the Eightfold Path. And, everyone recites these things. We even chant it when we go to the temple. But, we're just parroting. We're just saying out words, and maybe we do hear like suffering, the cause of suffering, the end of suffering, the way leading to the end of suffering. But it has no like transformative value, I guess, sometimes when we just say it like that. But when I hear Bhante Punnaji talk, it has transformative value. And that's why I imagine it would be to hear a Buddha. And, here it's not Bhante Punnaji giving his original ideas. He's just correctly translating the words of the Buddha. And, that sounds very, very, that's a bold claim to say, who I always say this, Joanna, when I'm telling you, when you ask me for something, I always say, who the hell am I to tell you, what to do or what to think, but I'll say the same thing. Who the hell am I to say that this is the real teachings of the Buddha? But, I have delved into the teachings of the Buddha now for 8 years. Not that the time spent diving into it has any value. It's more of just showing my interest in it. And if I'm interested in something, I want the most purest form of that something. And this seems to be that. And there's a book he wrote called the Ariya Magga Bhavana, which Ariya, what does Ariya mean, Joanna?
It means supernormal.
That's right. So Ariya is supernormal. It's normally translated as noble, but here it's called supernormal. And then we have Magga. What is Magga?
The way or the path.
That's right, the path. Usually Magga, if you hear Magga, you're thinking of the Eightfold Path, the Atangika Magga. And then Bhavana. What is Bhavana?
Existent. No, wait. Bhavana is developing something.
Yes, Bhava is existence. Bhavana is developing. So when we think of existence, Joanna, existence is just a certain set of conditions that are temporarily available, right?
Yeah.
Well, Bhavana is developing a certain set of conditions. So that's what we're doing when we use Bhavana. We're developing our mind. We're developing certain conditions in our mind that will lead to awakening. And so Ariya Magga Bhavana, developing the supernormal way. So this is that's the name of his book. And I think I might put a link at the bottom of the on the text under the video. So if anyone wants to read this book,
Oh, that's a good idea.
yeah, if one person takes a look and gets a taste of the deathless Dhamma, then I'll be happy. Remember, I just gave a talk on Sunday at a retreat at the temple, and I finished the talk by yelling at the people, if you get one thing from this talk, just know that death is not guaranteed. Death is not your destiny. There is the deathless, So I was yelling that over and over. There is the deathless. That was my my moment of being on the corner, yelling at people that Jesus is coming back and they're all going to hell. But yeah, it's very important, the idea of there being such a thing as the deathless. That's something extraordinary. I don't think anyone in this world would ever even think of that. The best they can do is think not of deathlessness, but of eternal life. But even that, in the back of their mind, they realize that there is no eternal life. All I see is death, everything, even
Hey,
this. Yes, go ahead.
Juan, during your Dhamma talk, you said everyone says that we come here and we die, and oh, what can we do?
Yeah,
And then you were saying that that's actually not true.
that's right. It drives me crazy, most likely it drives me crazy because of my own my own setbacks. Because but whenever someone criticizes anything, they're really just criticizing something inside themselves. But it makes me crazy that people just take death as, yep, oh well, what can I do? Might as well just enjoy myself. Yeah, you should enjoy yourself, if that means be happy. Yeah, your job should be to be happy. But don't relegate yourself to death. Don't think that that's your sentence, like you're some convict that got the death sentence. That's not your It's not your sentence. Don't think that you're some cattle that is destined to the slaughterhouse. That's not your destiny. It's only your destiny, it's only your sentence if you think it is. If whatever you think, that's what it is. And so the Buddha, even the end of this book, Joanna, which I'm going to pull it up now. I know
I was curious to know, what does Bhante Punnaji say about this idea? Like,
well,
how does he say it?
it's very interesting. We'll talk about it. I think we'll save that towards the end. If you want to know about the deathless, stay to the end. And
oh yeah, I do.
One moment, Joanna. Let's see. Yeah, so Bhante Punnaji, I was just saying that we're going to wait till the end, but who am I to wait? Bhante Punnaji called the deathless immortality. Immortality. And there's a famous saying that the Buddha, when the Bodhisattva Siddhartha was sitting under the Bodhi tree the night of awakening, he attained the threefold super knowledges, which is the super knowledge of past lives. He went back like 99,000 lives in samsara. Um, I hate talking like that because then people get stuck in existence. But we have to use language, so because this is a podcast and it's an audio podcast, so language is a must. But yeah, so he saw the past 99 lives and the 99,000 lives, and then the second super knowledge he attained was seeing how beings pass from one realm to another based on their actions. So he saw the results of actions. And the third super knowledge was how the influences, the emotional influences, how they arise and how they can cease, and how you can awaken and become free from the influences, which are all emotional. And that night he woke up and he figured out reality. He saw the Paticca Samupada, which we're going to talk about today, and we're going to hear how Bhante Punnaji breaks it down. When he thought that this teaching is so deep and so complex that the normal person, the ordinary person, they're not going to understand this teaching. And if they don't understand it, why is he going to teach them? It's just going to be frustrating to try to teach someone that has no chance of understanding. But then, this is how the story goes. This is what we've heard, that the Mahabrahma, the big wig celestial being, God with a capital G, however you want to say it, of the individual who has attained probably the most highest merit, good actions, results from good actions, to attain that position of Mahabrahma, came down and he asked the Buddha to please teach, because that there are people who have little dust in their eyes and that they will see. And the Buddha, he looked around, he said, maybe he's right. Maybe I'll look for my teachers, Alara Kalama and Udaka Paramaputta, who was his two teachers of yoga, meditation. And but then they had gone to the ayatanas, to the formless realms, the cognitive realms.
Oh, Juan, you were saying that the yatanas are those are the states of mind that one would reach after the first four jhanas, right?
Yes, because it goes jhana 1, jhana 2, jhana 3, jhana 4, which are ecstasies. And then once you get to the fourth ecstasy, you have the apperception, which apperception means you are now looking at the cognitive process of perception. And that's where you enter the ayatanas. And normally I didn't know what to call ayatanas. I like to call them the imageless dimensions, because I think ayatana is like a way of measuring, because we call our senses ayatanas too sometimes. It's like a way of getting information or seeing something. But Bhante Punnaji calls it the cognitive realms, which that's perfectly said, because that's what you're doing. You're breaking down the process of perception once you go into the ayatanas, the formless cognitive realms. But the Buddha, he saw the two teachers. He said, no, they gone to the ayatana realms because they attained a high level of meditation. They became anagamis. Anagami is a once returner, which we're going to discuss right now when we talk about the 10 chains of existence. And so then he looked to see for his 5 ascetic Dhamma practitioners who he practiced with, although they weren't practicing the true Dhamma yet. They were doing extreme asceticism. He saw them. He said, all right, I can teach these guys. They're going to understand, because they've developed their mind through countless lives, and especially in this life, they've developed their mind to a certain extent where now if they hear the Dhamma, they will penetrate through reality. And once he figured out that, yeah, there are some people with little dust in their eyes, he said this famous saying, which you see here on the screen, Joanna. Please, do you mind reading it? It's beating the drum of deathlessness. Yeah. What does he say?
Beating the drum of deathlessness. Open is a door to immortality. For those who have ears to hear, listen and be free from death. The drum is still beating. Hearken. Only those with little dust in their eyes will see the way out.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. that is so deep, that's why I was yelling at the people. I was beating the drum of the deathless. I'm like,
Yeah, you kept saying it over and over and over.
yeah, all that was missing was smacking my hands, like my
You
go-to
should
move.
have smacked your hands.
I know. Imagine that. It was my first time giving a talk to the Sri Lankan devotees. I know.
I'm just kidding.
No, I know. But yes, that's what I was doing, because this is important. People think that have to grow up, they have to get a good job, get a family, have kids, get old, get enough, make a retirement plan so that they can finally have fun at the end without working, and then die. That's the plan of life. And I'm like, what the hell is that? Not criticizing that, not everyone can give up everything. I'm still in this rat race, so I understand.
Yeah, me too.
But at least, know the options, know the opportunities, make it a conscious decision. Don't go through life thinking that that's the only possibility, that death is the only possibility, so might as well just have fun. But yeah, the Bhante Punnaji, he called the deathless immortality. And as you saw, open is the door to immortality. Because if there's no death, then that's immortality. That's not saying eternal life. Eternal life is not the same as immortality. The immortality just means freedom from death, because life and death go together. So you're gaining freedom from life and death, because life and death are just conceptual interpretations that bring you suffering. So Bhante Punnaji, he was incredible. He was a medical doctor. He became a medical doctor, I believe, at the age of 30, and he practiced medicine for like 8 to 9 years. But he wanted to become a monk right away, because he saw this famous monk, Bhante Narada, I believe, and he just how when I saw Bhante Srinivaza, I ran to him, and I love Bhante Srinivaza, I still do. He felt the same way for this Bhante, so he wanted to become a monk, but his family, they begged him not to become a monk.
Oh,
They wanted him to be stay a doctor and get married and have a family.
wait, Juan, exactly what kind of doctor was he?
A medical doctor.
Okay,
I
but
I think
what kind of work did he do? Like,
I'm guessing a general practitioner, but I'm not positive. I don't have all the details, unfortunately. But I just know
okay.
he was a medical doctor and he was practicing for 8 to 9 years.
Okay.
But I don't think it was like, anything specialized. But he wanted to become a monk, and his family was telling him not to. And then after a while, he finally, had enough, and he became a monk. And I remember once at one of his talks.
Wait, are you saying that he became a monk against his family's wishes?
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying what I've heard. That his family didn't want him to be a monk, and then at a certain point, he thought, if I'm going to be single, if you're going to be single, then I might as well become a monk, or else people start talking like, why is he single and not starting a family? So he became a monk, and I remember him giving a Dhamma talk once, and he said that when he became a monk, it felt like stepping out of hell. And that's such the interesting way to describe it, which I can see what he means.
We should have asked Bhante. Wait, did we ask Bhante Sanata that?
I don't know. I don't think so.
But I do remember him saying that it is better. Like, he is happier.
Yeah, could
being
be
a monk.
I guess we'll have to know when we do it, right? Don't worry, you don't have to say anything.
I'm just gonna ask Bhante Sanata.
Yeah, that's probably the easiest way. But yeah, so he said it was like stepping out of hell. And then he went on to being a monk. He went on to get a PhDs in other fields. He got a PhD in world religion, a PhD in philosophy, and I believe a PhD in psychology. So he had he has all these unique perspectives to play with. We when we talk, Joanna, in our private conversations, we talk about seeing all the angles. That's something we always bring up. And I think like all these perspectives that he specialized in allowed him to see all the angles.
Yeah, definitely.
And so seeing all the angles and then reading the words of the Buddha, the Pali, he can understand the actual meaning of what the Pali says. So he doesn't have to rely on the translations, because if we rely on just the translations we are accustomed to hearing, they might be wrong, and they might point you in the wrong direction.
Juan,
And
remember you once said that Bhante Punnaji encouraged people to study science
oh yeah,
in order to really understand the Dhamma.
Yeah, he said if you want to understand the Dhamma, you have to go study modern science, modern philosophy, modern psychology. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. He didn't say that, but that's the way he said it. That's the vibe, the tone I got.
And remember how I had mentioned in a prior episode how you always talk in the language of science?
Yeah, because I took my ass to school and started learning these things after I realized.
And then you said that
the
reason why it's
what I said is
so yeah, I was trying to say, Juan, that you had mentioned in a prior episode that the language of science is probably going to be the main way of communication in society, that our society is going to develop their minds further, and science will be like the common language. Something along those lines. Do you remember?
Yeah, although I don't think I may have said it that way. I think what I said is that science is the most accurate way of breaking down reality at the moment, but maybe in the future we might even evolve to a higher state of speaking, where it's going to be more experiential, even higher than science, because science right now is very objective. Objective meaning they're studying objects that they think exist, whether it's the science of chemistry or of physics or of astrology, or astronomy. uh, they're all trying to chemistry's looking at matter, which they think exists. Physics is looking at energy, which they think exists. um, Astronomy is looking at astral bodies, which they think exist. So science is it's kind of existential in that it's studying objects. So it's an objective practice, but it's probably the most accurate way of speaking at the moment. But the next step would be to get experiential, which is the kind of where science has gone in the quantum realm, because in the quantum realm we can't just purely objectively study reality. It's impossible, actually. It's the observer is always involved. And but yeah, I think that's what I had mentioned.
Yeah, I remember you saying maybe one day we'll have, when there's many arahants walking around, we'll be speaking we'll all be speaking in the language of science.
Yeah, that would be ideal. One day, hopefully. But yeah, so Bhante Punnaji went on to get these PhDs, and you're right, Joanna. He said, everyone should learn science, modern philosophy, and modern psychology. Yes. And he was like at the forefront. I kind of joke, not joking with Bhante Sanata Vihari, mostly because we're always joking when we're talking or hanging out. But I said that Bhante Punnaji was like almost one of the first neuroscientists, if we can say, because neuroscience came about when psychology and biology merged. They were separate fields, but then they got together. And Bhante Punnaji started in the biology realm, which is studying medicine. And then he finished in the psychology realm, which is a psychological study of the mind. And so then, that means he was one of the first neuroscientists. He was coming from that perspective. And that's why I think, you always hear me talk about the six senses and the process of perception and cognition. That's because that's talking in terms of biological psychology, neurology, neuroscience. It just makes sense because that's what's happening.
Yeah.
There's no way to think otherwise once you understand, unless you're unconscious. So, but yeah, that's where he came from. That's how I think his perspective on the Dhamma is so unique. Also, he's Sri Lankan, so he spoke Sinhalese, which is very common to Pali, which is how with the language that we have passed down the teachings of the Buddha, the words of the Buddha. So very, very lucky set of conditions that all came about with this most incredible teacher, Bhante Punnaji. And I know that you never got to meet him, but what do you think?
No.
What do you think when you think of him?
Well, when I hear him speak, I notice he speaks very slowly, but there's like that silence in between the words. It's like they also speak.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's giving you a moment to digest what he's saying.
Yes.
Because everything he tries to explain is it's like he's trying to help. I feel like he's trying to change the way you understand like everything, kind of.
Yes, and he's taking his time, and he knows what you're going to think with everything he says. So he's taking his time to let you think that, so that he can go on to the next point to make you understand further. And he has like thousands of talks out there. Everyone, if anyone wants to listen to Bhante Punnaji's talks, he literally has thousands of talks. Not literally, I guess, but close to thousands. It seems like if you look up Bhante Punnaji on YouTube. And this book that we're discussing today is that all those thousands of talks put into a concentrated form, and it's so potent, so potent. So me and Joanna, I brought up the idea of, we read some of Alan Watts's deep speeches. Let's read some of Bhante Punnaji. And the reason I thought about reading Bhante Punnaji is because, Joanna, you were asking about the chains of existence, right? You were interested.
Yes, I wanted to know what they were.
Yeah, so I'm like, I was trying to figure it out because, I think I mentioned to you that I feel with the Dhamma, there's memorizing it, there's knowing the order, and then there's knowing the reason for it. And the knowing the reason is the deepest part. That's the yoniso manasikara. Yoniso is a famous word. Yoniso manasikara is a famous word in Buddhism, and especially in Theravada Buddhism, because it's Pali. And yoniso is kind of like yoni, which yoni means with the womb. And manasikara, mana is kind of like mano, the thinking portion, the thinking process. Sikara is like a direction, a certain way of thinking. So the yoniso here doesn't literally mean the womb when we say it. It's actually talking about the origin, meaning the reason. What is the reason for this? And so yoniso manasikara, in English, we can say reasoning. And this is, so when we read the Dhamma, we want to memorize it. We want to know the order, because the order is important. Because the order is according to antecedents, a logical series of antecedents. An antecedent is, well, we're going to read about it in a little bit, but it's like a sequence, that something that leads to the next step, and it's in a logical order. And so that's why the memorization and knowing the order is very important. But the third portion is knowing the reason. And I don't know if I knew the reason for these 10 chains of existence. And right off the top of my head, I know it has to do something with evolution and evolutionary programming. These 10 chains probably are all there in the system of the organism so that it keeps you thinking that you exist and so that you will continue to struggle to survive and procreate.
Yeah, that makes, I mean, to me, that makes sense, Juan, because whenever I ask you anything, it always comes back to that.
Yeah. We look at the unconscious programming, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I thought. But then I also realized, like, hey, I have this gold mine called this Ariya Magga Bhavana, this book of Bhante Punnaji. So why don't I check it, And I checked it, and yeah, he talks about the 10 chains of existence. So I wanted to read a little bit about this. This is towards the end of the book. So we're starting at the end, and what's more Zen than starting at the end? So it starts off by saying conclusion. I'll read the first portion, and then you can read the 10 chains when we get there, Joanna.
Okay.
So he says, the system of meditation described in this book in the form of the 3 stages of meditative experience is nothing other than the supernormal Eightfold Way, Ariya Atangika Magga, divided into 3 sections. We have translated the word Ariya as a supernormal because that is the meaning of the term Ariya. The Buddha used another term, Putujana, normal, to emphasize the distinction between the normal, Putujana, and the supernormal, Ariya. Modern psychologists use the 2 terms, normal and abnormal, to indicate 2 levels of consciousness. But the Buddha used these terms, normal and supernormal, to indicate 2 other levels of consciousness. The 3 stages of meditative experience are nothing other than the well-known 3 levels of practice: purity of behavior, sila, emotional purity, samadhi, and intellectual purity, panya. These 3 stages of practice come under the supernormal Eightfold Way, the true path of purification. The first 5 steps in the supernormal Eightfold Way cover the purity of behavior, sila. The 6th step covers the emotional purity, samadhi, and the 7th and 8th step cover the intellectual purity, panya. The completion of the supernormal Eightfold Way ends in a paradigm shift, which is not merely an intellectual transformation, but also an emotional and behavioral transformation. In other words, it is a complete change in disposition, character, or personality. A self-centered individual is transformed into a selfless one. And then that's what it says. Does that make sense so far, Joanna?
Yeah.
So does that make sense so far?
Yes, it does. And I was thinking, Juan, while I was reading this, it's like, it sounds like a magic potion or like, because it is magic. It's like you're transforming, you're like making the impossible possible by following these steps.
Yes. Sometimes the monks during the time of the Buddha would go talk to the Buddha, and then they would come back and they would look like high. That's the best way I can describe it. High, super happy. And the monks would ask him, your disposition looks so sweet and happy and like comfortable. Did you talk to the Buddha? They would ask him, and they would be like, yes, they would use this word. I drank the ambrosia of the Dhamma. Ambrosia is like this heavenly nectar of the Dhamma. So it's funny, you're describing it just how they would describe it in the suttas. You just call it like a magic potion. This Dhamma is beautiful. It's delicious. It's good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end. So the next paragraph, it starts to talk about the 10 chains to existence. So why don't you go ahead?
Okay. The transformed individual becomes a spiritually emancipated individual who has broken the 10 bonds or fetters. This is because 10 fetters fetter the self-centered individual to the existential mode. The 10 fetters, also known as Samyojana, Samyojana, are as follows. Number 1, personal body perspective.
Let's talk about each one as we go. So please read it again and read the Pali.
Okay, so the first one is personal body perspective, which in Pali is the Sakaya Ditti.
Yes. So here, kaya, you already know, is body. And sa is kind of like the Spanish way of saying su, like su cuerpo,
Oh,
sakaya. And diti is perspective.
so it's like saying your body perspective.
Yeah, the perspective that it is your body. So here, the Bhante Punnaji calls it personal body perspective. And we start to talk about why that is in a little bit. But basically, you're taking this body as yourself. And that's the normal way of the normal individual. They personalize this body as myself. And we're going to go over the Paticca Samupada, and we're going to figure out why it is that we personalize this body as ourself.
You mean later after we describe these, we're going to go over the Paticca Samupada?
Yes, that's correct. And so that's the first chain, the first shackle, the first bond. We're in bondage.
So the first chain is believing that this body is yours, right?
Yes. And that's why it's called the personal body perspective.
Sakaya Ditti.
Yeah. Sakaya.
Sakaya. Sakaya Ditti.
Yeah, whenever you see that line over an A, it's a long A, like ka instead of ka. Sakaya. that's why Bhante Kalita sounds like so cool when he speaks Pali. He's like enunciating it properly.
Wow.
And all right, so what's the second chain, the second shackle, the second bond?
The second shackle or the second chain is the cognitive dissonance, which in Pali is vikicha. No, vikicha.
No.
Vikicha.
Vichi kicha.
Vichi kicha.
There you go. Yeah, so vichi kicha. Cognitive dissonance. So this is the term that it's used in psychology nowadays.
I've heard you say cognitive dissonance many times. I've heard Bhante Sanata say cognitive dissonance many times, and I've heard Bhante Punnaji say cognitive dissonance. Can you explain it really quick one last time what it means?
Yeah, it's basically normally cognitive dissonance is thought of when two set of ideas are in conflict. You know, like your way of thinking of yourself is in conflict with certain something you're doing. And there's this inner conflict, like almost this paralysis inside. You don't know what to do. And that is the dissonance. Dissonance means it's not harmonious. It's not in harmony. They're not together. They're in conflict. So cognitive dissonance is a conflict in the mind, a psychological conflict. But here, that's why the word in Pali is vi, chi, ki, cha. So vi is separate or divided, and vi, that's vi. And then chi is for chitta, the mood, the temperament. But here is talking about the mind, pretty much, the mental, the mind being divided. And that's what the kicha is, the division. So the two things that are divided here is the cognitive process of the organism and the affect process of the organism. The affect is the mood, the feeling, the emotion. So normally, you know, when we go take the 5 precepts, that's a cognitive decision. We know we should, we know it's good, we know it's for our own benefit. So we take up the 5 precepts. But then when we get emotional and break the 5 precepts, that's because our emotions, we're thinking, we're using the thinking in a different way, because emotions, you know, they hijack the thinking. And so you have 2 ways of thinking. One is the keeping the precepts. The other is expressing the emotion. And there's the conflict. And our whole lives, the human beings have this cognitive dissonance.
Okay, so Juan, basically you're saying that cognitive dissonance is when when a person has the emotion, when their mind is in conflict when their mind has conflict between the emotions and rationality,
and reason.
and reason.
That's right.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Please go on to the next one.
Okay, so chain number 3 is heteronomous morality. In Pali, that is silabata paramasa.
That's right. Thank you. That's right. So heteronomous morality. Hetero here means like other, nomus, morality. Morality is your sense of right and wrong. So here, heteronomous morality means your sense of right and wrong is led by something other than yourself. So that can mean that maybe you do the right thing. Your sense of right and wrong is because God is telling you this is what's good, and this is what's bad, and that's what's leading your morality. Your sense of right and wrong is from something other than yourself. Or maybe you're a Buddhist and you're thinking, I'm going to do the right thing because of karma. I don't want the results of bad actions to come back and haunt me, so I'm doing it because I don't want bad results in the future. That's also, your morality is also coming from something other than yourself. And so that's why it's called heteronomous morality. That's sila. Sila is not doing bad. Bhata is doing good. And paramasa, that's foreign, something other, something outside of yourself. And the opposite of this is autonomous morality. We talk a lot of, we people hate the idea of us becoming more autonomous, because that means that people might lose jobs. But it's actually a good thing when it comes to morality, because you're being good because of inside. So yes, this autonomous morality is a good thing, because now you do the right thing. Your sense of right and wrong is because of what you think inside, and what you value. And it's not from anything outside. It's not from a God. It's not from karma and rebirth. It's not for any reason. It's not because the law tells you to do it. You do good because you know the value of goodness, and you know that goodness means happiness. But yes, what do you think?
Well, this reminds me of a discussion we were having with Bhante Sanata in one of his classes. He was saying that normally the average person does the right thing because they're afraid of the consequences they will have to face if they do the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that ideally, it would be ideal for a person to base their morals on to do the right thing because it feels right, and they want to do it because it is the right thing, not because they're afraid of what would happen to them if they don't do it.
That's right. That's perfectly said. Thank you, Bhante Sanata.
Yes, thank you, Bhante.
So what is number 4?
Number 4, the fourth chain is avarice, which is kama raga.
Yes. So here, avarice means like a deep, deep greediness. And here in Pali, it's kama raga. Kama here with the one M, and is not action. Here, kama with one M is sensual. And raga is passion. It's like passion here from a biological standpoint means full of hormones. And
Whoa.
full of hormones means you're
crazy.
You're crazy. You're ready to
You're a
go after it.
wild bull.
Yeah, exactly. A wild passion for sensual pleasure. That's what kama raga is. That's the fourth chain. We live our lives chasing after pleasure and running away from pain, the aversion to pain, which goes right into the fifth chain. What is that?
The fifth chain is aversion, and that is paticca.
Yeah.
Paticca.
There you go, Paticca. Um, yeah, there's so many words for like aversion or anger or ill will. There's like Paticca, Koda, Dosa, Biapada, and I'm sure many more than I know. Um, but basically, it's aversion to pain. One is a deep-seated, passionate, wild passion for sensual pleasure, which means you're a deep-seated greed, and the other is an aversion. This hatred of pain, and that's the fourth and fifth chain. And so far, what if evolution, Joanna, was programming an organism to survive for countless generations, you would want him to have a personality body perspective. You want him to have cognitive dissonance because you want him to go after what his emotions want. And you want heteronomous morality. You want him, his sense of right and wrong, to be based on outside reasons, meaning reasons like whatever the culture is.
Whatever society trains them to believe is right.
Why? Because the people who follow the rules are gonna survive. That's right.
Yeah, if you don't follow society's rules, you're not gonna make it, and that's why nature has designed us this way.
Yep. So that makes sense to me. And then what else? Nature wants you to go after pleasure because it programmed you to feel pleasure from things that will help you survive and procreate.
To reproduce.
Eating food is pleasurable. Having sex is pleasurable. Gaining status and being, just gaining status and being honored is pleasurable. Well, that's also going to help you get more mates and get you in better positions to survive. So kama raga, we can see, is how that's what you would want evolution to program into the organism for them to survive. What's the next thing? Aversion. Aversion. It wants you to be aversive to pain. And why? Because it programmed painful things to be things that will harm and hurt your chances to life, right?
Yeah.
So like getting cut, oh, I need to get to danger, any type of pain means, oh, whatever I'm doing is bad. If you eat something, a poison, it hurts, so aversion is programmed into the organism by evolution. So far, all of these check out. And then what's the sixth one? Now we get into the the trippy
one. The sixth one is visual lust, which you were talking about earlier. You were saying that humans are attracted to beautiful things, and that is what drives humans to reproduce. They are attracted to the opposite sex purposely so that they can have a drive to reproduce.
Yeah. And what's the Pali?
The Pali is Rupa Raga.
Yes, and whenever you see a U with a line over it, you elongate it. You make it Rupa.
Rupa Raga.
There you go. And so Rupa is a picture, right? Or here it's just it's translated as visual lust, visual passion. And here it's getting to the higher levels of reality, which is the jhana levels and then the ayatana levels, arupa. So the image realm is rupa loka. Loka is like world or universe or realm. So here we have a natural passion or lust for images. That's why there's a visual lust. Image. There's one sense in our brain that has a huge portion of the real estate in your cerebral cortex. And what is that? It is the visual cortex, the occipital lobe. There's 4 lobes.
Where is it located in the brain?
It's in the back of your head. It's in the back. And it's funny because when the eyes, they cross. So what you see on the left side gets transported to the right side of your brain. What you see on the right side gets transported to the left side of the brain. And not only that, the image gets to the back of your brain upside down.
Oh.
And then it's only in your once perception starts noticing what it is being constructed, that it makes the picture look right side up. It's weird. What we're seeing what the information is being carried to our brain is not what we actually experience. What we experience is a neat little package, like someone put a little present, put a little bow on it, a nice wrapping paper, and then presents it. Here's reality. But no, that's not reality. It's just what the nervous system's presenting to you to help you survive. What is the next one?
The next one, the seventh chain, is lust for non-visual being, which in Pali is arupa raga.
Yes. So arupa raga is now we're talking about like when after the first four jhanas, the first four ecstasies, you go into the ayatanas, the cognitive realms, the formless realms, arupa. And here, this is a little tougher, but it's basically if I had to say what it is, it's like all the cognitive process without any of the picture. There's still a cognitive process without picture happening. And the once returners, the anagamis, they go to the ayatan, to the arupa realms, which is the arupa loka, the place where there is no pictures. There's just a mental existence. And that's why it's called the lust for non-visual being. Being is existence. And it's funny because it's only the arahant that can get over the sixth and seventh and eighth and ninth and 10th fetter. Only the fully awakened being can give up visual lust and lust for non-visual being. And
I'm sorry, Juan. Chain number 7, lust for non-visual being. Non-visual being. I'm not really sure if I understand what that means.
It's a type of existence that without a picture. I'm having trouble thinking of a good example. Bhante Punnaji will talk about this when we go over the next few paragraphs after the 10 steps.
Oh, okay.
So hopefully he talks about it.
We'll clarify it later then.
And then what's the 8th step or the 8th chain?
The 8th chain is egotism, which is in Pali, manya.
Mana.
Oh, sorry, mana.
Yes. So mana. So mana is here translated as egotism. Normally it's translated as pride, pride. And I think in Sinhalese, the Sri Lankan language, it's also called pride. Because I remember when I was at the devotee's home and I said mana, the wife was very happy in telling her husband, like, look, did you hear what he said? He said mana, pride. And that's when I realized, oh, she thought I was talking Sinhalese, but I'm using Pali. But so normally it's translated as as pride. And here Bhante Punnaji uses egotism, which when I saw that, I'm like, ooh, I like that. And there's usually 3 kinds of mana. Mana can be either like a superiority complex, thinking you're better than others, superior to others, because mana's pride is and egotism, you're just comparing with others. And because if there's an ego, then there's others to compare yourself to. And so the first way of comparing is like a superiority complex, where you think you're better than others. And then there's the inferiority complex, inferior way of seeing yourself in comparison to others, which is you think others are better than you, think you're worse than others, lower than others. And then there's the neutral way of comparing yourself to others. We are the same. But all of those are all fallacies of conception. First of all, there is no self. And then this is just a process of comparing yourself. And usually comparing yourself with others is not a recipe for happiness. With the Buddha, he's our ideal, but he's our ideal in order so that we reach that ideal, but it's not an emotional comparison there. And if it is, then it's probably not healthy for you. So here the egotism is comparing yourself to others, whether it's better than others, worse than others, or same as others. What is the ninth one?
The ninth chain is excitement. Udacha.
Yes. And when we talk about the five hindrances, you know, kama, kama chanda, vyapada, tinamida, and then the fourth one is udacha kukucha. So udacha here is translated as excitement, but it's kind of like anxiety. It's an anxiety. And you know,
Oh, So chain number 9, excitement, is like anxiety.
yeah, that type of excitement where it's not like it's not a pleasurable excitement. It's more of like, you know, would if so let's go back to the analogy of evolution. If evolution was programming the organism, Joanna, would you want them to have egotism and anxiety?
Well, I feel that egotism would be necessary because if they don't compare themselves to others, then they're not going to strive to better themselves.
Yes, in order to procreate and
Yeah.
survive.
And if they did not have excitement or anxiety, they would not constantly strive for
Struggle to exist.
well, I feel like if you're always anxious, that means you're always thinking about the future and you're always trying to like accomplish goals and you're never satisfied with any of the goals, so you keep making more and more goals until you die.
Yeah. And yep, that sounds like about right for what evolution wants the organism, right, to behave.
Yeah, because if you don't have any goals, then you're just going to stop.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that may work against you when it comes to reproducing.
Yep. So there we have the eighth and ninth, egotism and excitement or anxiety. And what's the 10th chain? The 10th chain, and this is an order for a reason because it gets harder and harder and harder to break free from these chains. What's the 10th one?
The 10th one is unconsciousness, which is avijja.
Yes.
Avijja.
Bhante Kolita is going to be so happy when he hears you pronounce Pali now. um, yeah, so avijja, avijja.
Avijja.
Yeah, Vija is conscious, fully conscious. Avija, Avija. That is absolutely unconscious. So that is the difference between conscious and unconsciousness, and that's our biggest chain, that we're unconscious. So unconsciousness, Avija, is how this experience starts. You know, when the baby is born, the baby has no idea what's happening. You know, the baby's not even breathing yet. Sometimes the baby comes out and it's not breathing. You got to smack it in the bottom so it starts to breathe. So it cries so it can start to breathe. So he didn't consciously think, it's time for me to breathe. I've made it to the world. You know, he unconsciously just started breathing due to the necessary conditions. You know, he got smacked in the bottom and he screamed out, and that allowed him to start breathing. And that's how life started for each and every one of us. And then that's how experience is getting started for each and every one of us in every moment. And we're going to see that how the Paticca Samupada starts with unconsciousness, and that's the avijja. And that's why it's the 10th chain, and it's the deepest chain, because once you destroy this shackle, this chain, this bond, then you're free. No longer will you be under the sway of unconsciousness. You'll be fully conscious. Because if you're not unconscious, then you're fully conscious, absolutely conscious. And that's what happened to the Buddha when he woke up from the dream of existence and he saw the Paticca Samupada. So any questions on unconsciousness?
No.
So now we know the 10 chains of existence: personal body perspective, cognitive dissonance, heteronomous morality, avarice, aversion, visual lust, lust for non-visual being, egotism, excitement or anxiety, and unconsciousness. These 10 chains are what bonds us, or puts us in bondage to existence. If we could break free from the influences of these 10 things, we would be arahants. So Bhante Punnaji goes on, he says, the practice of the first 5 steps of the Supernormal Eightfold Way helps break the first 3 fetters. So samadhi, harmonious perspective; sama sankappa, the harmonious orientation; sama vacha, harmonious speech; sama kamanta, harmonious action; and sama ajiva, is the harmonious lifestyle. So these first 5 steps in the Supernormal Eightfold Way helps break the first 3 fetters. It helps break the personality body perspective, the cognitive dissonance, and the heteronomous morality, doing the right thing because of something outside of yourself. So when these are broken, the practitioner becomes one who has entered the stream, sotapanna. The stream is the Supernormal Eightfold Way that leads to nirvana, nibbana. Just as a river falls into the ocean, ultimately one who becomes a stream enterer ultimately enters nirvana, nibbana, within 7 lives. When one enters the stream, one has also entered the supernormal level, at least in terms of behavior. One does not practice good behavior only to satisfy others or to gain some rewards. One behaves well because one has understood the need for good behavior, especially consideration for others as well as oneself. This is the meaning of autonomous morality. Autonomous morality can be said in Pali, aparama, aparam. That was it's a long word, huh? You want to give it a shot?
Aparamatan samadhi samvatanikan.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Very good. So that's autonomous morality, which is the opposite of heteronomous morality. Sila bata paramasa. Sila bata paramasa. The practice of the 6th step in the Supernormal Eightfold Way, which is the harmonious exercise, sama vayama, at least to the level of the first ecstasy, Samyojana, first ecstasy.
Wait, you skipped a sentence.
Oh, yes. So please start that paragraph again.
The practice of the 6th step in the Supernormal Eightfold Way, which is the harmonious exercise, sama vayama, helps to bring about emotional purity and tranquility. Samadhi, at least to the level of the first ecstasy. Patamaj-jana. If this emotional purity is accompanied by a certain level of intellectual purity, panya, the 4th and 5th fetters, kamaraga, patiga, could be diminished to the extent of becoming a once returner. Sakadagami.
Yes.
Sakadagami.
So he's saying that if you start practicing the 6th step of the Eightfold Path, which is the supernormal, the harmonious exercise, sama vayama, which is 4 steps. Remember, I emphasized that in the talk. That was the key to happiness, that 6th step, being able to prevent the perceptual image from disturbing the mind, eliminating the memory image from disturbing the mind, cultivating a good, peaceful image, a thought, and then maintaining it. That's harmonious exercise. He's saying that if whoever practices that, it helps them bring about an emotional purity and tranquility. It means your mood, your disposition becomes pure, meaning free from emotions, and that leads to a tranquility, samadhi. And that means at least to the first jhana. You can get to the first jhana by practicing this harmonious exercise. And if that emotional purity is accompanied by a certain level of intellectual purity, meaning if you can
Wisdom, right?
wisdom, yeah, if you gain that wisdom in that first jhana, then the fourth and fifth step, the fourth and fifth fetters, the fourth and fifth chains or shackles start to diminish, meaning they lose their power to a certain extent, and that will allow you to become a once returner. So a sotapanna has entered the stream to nirvana. That means within 7 lives they will become awakened, 7 human lives. So they will only have to experience birth, aging, sickness, and death at least within 6 more times. And but if you can somehow diminish the strength of the sensual lust and the aversion to pain, then you can become a once returner, meaning you will attain nibbana within 1 more human life. Then go ahead and read the next paragraph.
The practice of the 7th and 8th steps in the Supernormal Eightfold Way, which are the harmonious attention and the harmonious equilibrium, which in other words is the practice of the 7 steps to awakening, results in the paradigm shift, leading to awakening from the dream of existence and experiencing the imperturbable serenity of nirvana, nibbana. A person who has entered this state becomes a fully emancipated arahat.
Yes. So it doesn't mention it here, but the anagami, the non-returner, is the one who has broken the first 5 chains. And then the arahat, the one who has broken all 10, is the arahat. He's the only one that can break the visual lust, the non-visual lust for being, the egotism, the anxiety, excitement, and the unconsciousness. So that's the arahant. So basically, the arahant, the awakened being, the Buddha, arahant Buddha, is one who has broken and reprogrammed all of evolution's programming to make you think you exist and that you better struggle to survive because you're going to get sick, old, and die at any moment. Does that make sense so far?
Yes, you're describing the different levels of awareness, right? Like different stages of
Awakening.
awakening. Yeah. And you said the ideal, the highest one is the arahat,
Yes.
which is no returner, right?
No. The arahant is completely awakened. The non-returner, the reason is called the non-returner, that's the 3rd level. The arahant is the
The
4th.
anagami is the non-returner.
That's right. And he's non-returner because he's going to the formless realms, arupa loka. And in the formless realm, you live for many, many eons. And you don't have you can say you don't have a body because there is no body. The body is made up of mental pictures. But since that's a imageless realm, you could say there's no body. There's just all I can describe it is a type of energy.
Yeah.
But it goes on for many lives, and that's where the so-called Amitabha Buddha. Remember we described him last time. That he says he goes to the pure abodes so that everyone who's born there will attain awakening without struggle.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of right, because anyone who develops their mind and makes it to as an anagami, makes it to the imageless realm, then at the end when the energy runs its course, then it just attains awakening.
Also, they don't have to come back here.
Yeah, that's why they're non-returners. They never come back to the human realm.
Even though they didn't become arahants.
That's right. And I think people who are from other religions who attain like exalted states, whether they do it consciously or unconsciously, meaning, well, it always has to be it always has to be consciously to attain it. But I mean, whether they consciously knew they were practicing the supernormal Dhamma, I think all these supernormal beings who attain some sort of awakening, I think at most they can be non-returners. And then at that in that imageless realm, that's where when the energy dissipates, they just wake up from the dream of existence completely. But only when there's a Buddha can the Arahant.
Okay, hold on 1 second.
Yes. Yes. So what does that make you think about?
Oh, okay. So I was just clarifying that the Arahant is the person who is fully awakened. The Anagami is a person who is not fully awakened, but will no longer return to samsara.
Yes. And
And
the non-returner has broken the first 5 chains only.
yeah, and I wanted to tell you that I feel like breaking the first 5 chains is possible. I don't think
Mm.
it's impossible. I think if a person really wanted to, they could break the first 5 chains like in one lifetime. I feel
Hell yeah.
like I feel like if it was a priority for you, for a person, I feel like it's totally possible. And me personally, like from everything that I've heard, you and all the Bhantes say, everything I've learned about the Dhamma and everything I've learned from my own life experience has taught me that ideally you cannot like it is not ideal to obsess over something and to like force it. You have to have a balance when you strive for something. So I feel that if you do strive to break the first 5 chains, you have to maintain a balance through your journey of attaining it. You cannot you cannot force it, and you cannot, of course, you can't be lazy about it, but you can't like be too obsessed by it. You have to be like just in between, like keep a balance in your journey to reach that state. And I think that is the ideal way to strive for anything that is challenging.
Yeah, that's true. I remember Bhante Kalita loves to give the analogy that from the suttas where a man mentions the strings of a guitar, they can't be too loose or too tight, or else they won't sound well. And that's kind of what you're mentioning.
What's the name of that sutta?
I'll have to look for it.
Yeah, I remember it.
All right, I'll share it with you after. But yeah, it makes sense. You're right, and I think that's why the supernormal eightfold way, every step has sama, which means like that balance, right? That harmony. Every step of the way, you're taking a harmonious approach.
Yes.
All right. So from here on, he goes to describe like the problem of life, but we'll leave that. We've discussed so far. We made it. We know that the first 3, the Sotapanna, the first level of awakening, will break the first 3 chains. Then the once returner, the Sotapanna, he awakens within the next 7 human lives. The once returner makes it back only to the human realm one more time, and that's because he's not only broken the first 3 chains, but he's also weakened the 4th and 5th chain. So the Sotapanna has broken the personality perspective, the cognitive dissonance, and the heteronomous morality, meaning he's not doing the right thing anymore because of outside influences. He's doing it from inside influences. He's from autonomous. He's from his own autonomy. That's the Sotapanna. Then the Sakadagami, the once returner, he not only breaks the first 3, but then he weakens his sensual lust, his avarice, greediness for sensual pleasure, and his aversion of pain and just aversion in general. He weakens those 2 chains. So that's a once returner. And then the Anagami, the non-returner, he breaks these first 5 chains, which apparently, Joanna, you're going to be an Anagami because you think it's possible. Which I think is wonderful. And Then the Arahant, he's the one that breaks the sixth, visual lust, seventh, lust for non-visual being, eighth, egotism, ninth, excited anxiety, 10th, unconsciousness. He breaks these last 5 chains. So in total, he breaks the 10 chains of existence. And that's why he's emancipated. Arahant literally means ara, uh, um, bonds or chains. Hant, breaker of chains. You know, I don't know, for people who watched um, Game of Thrones, one of the characters, the queen, the Khaleesi, was known as the breaker of chains, but the real breaker of chains is the Arahant.
Why was she known as the breaker of chains?
Because she would go from town to town to freeing the slaves in the show.
Oh.
But then she went crazy at the end. But that's, I don't recommend anyone watch Game of Thrones because the last season is not the best. So just from the Putujana level, the normal level, I wouldn't recommend it, but it's a good first few seasons. But yeah, so now we've gone through the 10 chains to existence, but now I wanted to talk about the Paticca Samupada, because you know we know the 10 chains. Well, how do we break them? You know, how do you think we break them, Joanna?
You have to train your mind. You have to maintain a certain state of mind.
One moment, Joanna. So, Joanna, you said you were mentioning how you break these chains, because I just asked you. So please explain what you think.
Yeah, I was saying that in order to break the chains, you have to be aware of, I think, the Eightfold Path. I was saying that, yeah, it's like being aware of the Eightfold Path and slowly changing your paradigm, like slowly changing the way that your viewpoint, how you understand yourself and the world.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, these 10 chains are the problem, and we have to look for the solution to this problem, which is the supernormal eightfold path. And within this path, the paradigm shift is what we're trying to cause, trying to trigger. So yeah, I think you definitely have the right answer. Now, what I was going to go to as far as where we're heading with this is we're going to head to understanding the Paticca Samupada, because you know this eightfold path starts with the samaditi, the harmonious perspective, and that takes a paradigm shift to get there, right? You have to figure out the problem of life and looking for the solution.
Yeah, you have to accept reality, the ugly truth of reality. How, you know, the things that we don't really want to see or understand. Well, not understand, the things we don't really want to acknowledge and accept, like death, the building up and breaking down of these bodies, of our body, of the body that we have.
Yeah, you got to look the ugly truth in the eye, as you always say.
Yeah.
So this paradigm shift that starts with the samaditi, understanding the problem and look and the solution, this paradigm shift actually takes place there, but it has not shifted completely to the point where we're arahants yet. And the paradigm shift truly changes completely when we understand reality by understanding the Paticca Samupada, the series of logical antecedents. And that's where I was going to head with this, is that now we know the 10 chains, which are what keeps us in bondage to existence and to suffering. And in order to break these chains, we need a full paradigm shift. And for that, we have to understand reality. what is taking place. And that's where we were going to cover the Paticca Samupada.
Hey, Juan, would you say that when you can follow the Eightfold Path, if you are able to follow the Eightfold Path, you will automatically have a paradigm shift and you will automatically break the 8 chains. I mean, the 10 chains, right?
Yes, if you're following the path properly, yes, that's what this whole book is about. This whole book of Bhante Punnaji's, he's going through the three stages in this practice, which is the sila, samadhi, and the panya. The sila is the purification of the behavior. The samadhi is the purification of the emotional state, and the panya is the purification of your intellect. So what he's doing is he's the first 5 steps of the Eightfold Path. That's the first stage of this meditation, of this supernormal Eightfold Way meditation. And then the second step is the 6th step of the Eightfold Path, which is the harmonious exercise. And then what we're discussing here, we started at the very end. We started at the deepest end, and we're starting at the panya level. And the panya level is the 7th samasati and 8th step samasamadhi, because from 7 to 8 and then to awakening, that's the 7 steps of awakening. So the third stage of this supernormal Eightfold Path, which is the panya level, this has 2 of the Eightfold steps, Eightfold Path steps, and it's the start is samasati, which is harmonious attention, and that's the first step of the 7 steps to awakening. And so I know there's lots of steps being mentioned, so people might be getting confused, but basically at this level, we're starting the descent, or I'm sorry, we're starting the ascent to the peak of this practice. And the peak is arahantship, breaking of the bonds. So in order to understand this Paticca Samupada, we have to kind of talk about what's happening within the organism. So Joanna, since this Paticca Samupada is so important for us to understand and comprehend reality, what is actually occurring, and in order to break through these 10 chains of existence, we have to understand the Paticca Samupada. And I think you wanted to mention what you thought of Paticca Samupada.
Yeah, I wanted to make an attempt to explain what I have come to understand is the Paticca Samupada. So I wanted to say that from my understanding, the Paticca Samupada is very, I remember saying before that all I really know is that it's really, really important. And the reason why is because it's the foundation of the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path we had mentioned before in a prior podcast is like a recipe of how to reach Nibbana, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So the Paticca Samupada is part of that recipe, right?
Yeah, it's like the
It's like
frosting.
it's like the main ingredient, would you say?
Sure.
The frosting?
Yeah, it's like the very end of it, what goes on top that makes up the path worth it. When you
Oh,
realize the Paticca Samupada, that's when you get the Vijja, fully conscious, and the Vimutti, the liberation.
okay. So what I've come to understand, the way I've come to understand Paticca Samuppada is that it is the way it is understanding how the mind, the human body, and the mind work. And I was saying that I think I had mentioned to you before in another conversation that that throughout my time learning the Dhamma with at the temple and with discussing it with you, I realized that I've started to, I guess the Paticca Samupada is something that I've come to understand slowly throughout time. And it's basically being able to understand human behavior, human psychology, and see why humans do the things they do, and how in reality, most of the things that humans do, they do them without being aware of why they do them.
Yes.
And but when you develop understanding of why humans behave the way that they do, and why they usually make certain decisions, it's easier to understand them. Like, it's easier to not like personalize the behavior, and to step outside of it and see, oh, okay, I see why this is the reason why I'm doing this is because this and this is happening in my mind. These are the hormones that are going through my body right now, and that's why I'm reacting emotionally. Or like, yeah, you start to see the body as an organism. Like for example, I noticed throughout my experience of learning the Dhamma, one day I went to go get some fries at In-N-Out, and I was standing in line, and I was just looking at people in front of me. But instead of looking at them the way I normally would look at them, I was looking at them kind of like observing them as organisms, not as humans. I was kind of like observing them like as plants. Like plants, they grow and they reproduce and then they die. And then I was looking at these humans kind of like organisms. They grew, they they reproduce, and then they're gonna die. But at that moment, they were eating so that they could live another day. And it was strange to me that I was looking at them this way and observing them this way, kind of like in a detached manner. But I feel like this is one of the well, this is what happens when you start to learn the Dhamma, right? But this understanding is part of the Paticca Samuppada. Would you say so, Juan?
Yes. The Paticca Samupada is supposed to give you the insight and the knowledge of how we are all like robots, how everyone is behaving unconsciously due to the presence of the necessary conditions. They're under the influence of the environment. They're under the influence of the inner environment of the organism. And evolution programmed everyone to act a certain way in order to continue the struggle for existence. That's why we think this existence is so real, because evolution wants you to take it as real. But when you start to see how these organisms behave due to the presence of the necessary conditions, you see how mechanical it is. Just because it's organic does not mean it's not mechanical. It is very mechanical. And that's what allows us to stop personalizing. That's what allows us to stop personalizing ourselves and others. Because there's no personality there. There's just a set of activities. And most of the time it's happening unconsciously. So yeah, if you understand the Paticca Samupada, you're going to understand how mechanical this process is. And you're going to actually truly see people. You're going to truly see them at that point. And I think that's what you were describing at McDonald's.
It was In-N-Out.
Oh yeah. What was I thinking?
And you know what's kind of what's ironic about it? I was ordering the animal style French fries.
Yeah, right.
And then
Exactly.
I was standing in line observing animals, and I was getting ready to order the animal style French fries.
Mm.
Isn't it interesting how normally I feel like before, well, I have before in the past looked at humans as animals, but I feel that the main reason why I have done that is because I have studied biology, and in the study of biology, we look at humans as a species and an organism, which is pretty much an animal. But
Yes.
the Dhamma is like the only other type of. I just find it interesting that in the Dhamma, through the Dhamma, we really do emphasize observing humans as organisms, as animals, and the Paticca Samupada really focuses on observing humans as what you would say robots or animals that are already programmed to behave and do what they're going to do without being aware of why they're doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like how you're using the animal to as an example of how mechanical they can be. And yeah, we are humans. We have the cerebral cortex, which allows us to think and reason out, but we are still dominated by our emotional brain. And that's what governed the animals. This emotional brain, the limbic system, is so old, really old, much older than the human being. And so it's so ingrained in the system. And here on the screen, Joanna, what you were saying reminded me of a saying that Bhante Punnaji uses a lot. Do you mind reading it?
Yeah. It says feeding, sleeping, fear, and sex is common to both man and beast. Cognition does make man very special. When low in cognition, man is a beast. And
Mm.
then it says it in Pali. Is that Pali?
Yeah, ahara. I know you know what ahara is. Food or eating. Ahara.
Do you want me to try to read it?
Yeah, and match the words to the English if you can.
Okay. Ahara, nidra, baya, maitunancha.
Yeah. So that's the ahara is a feeding, nidra is a sleep. There's that nidra pose that they use a lot in yoga. That's where you just lie down. And then baya is the fear, and maitunancha is the sex.
And then the next line says samanya,
Hmm.
me, tad, pasubi, samana.
Yes, is common to both man and beast.
Samana is beast.
I don't think so. I think that's the man.
Oh, maybe pasubi is beast.
Could be.
And then the next line says dar mohi te sa madiko viseso.
Cognition does make man very special.
And then the fourth line says dar mena hina pasubu samana.
When low in cognition, man is a beast. So yeah, Pasubu is the beast there, and the Samana is talking about the man, and Dharma is the cognition, the thinking.
Well, it makes a lot of sense when people are engrossed by their emotions, they do become beasts.
Mm-hmm.
Remember how we had said earlier, we had discussed in a prior podcast that emotions are the root of all evil.
Yeah.
So yeah, when a human is engrossed in emotions, they become a horrible beast.
Yeah, that is definitely a potential.
But I was going to tell you something. I forgot. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Can't remember what I was going to say.
It's okay. So this is just showing us how mechanical people are, because most people are dominated by the same systems that dominate the animal. And when a dog sees or hears someone at the door, he might start barking immediately. He doesn't think, oh, who is it? Is it an enemy or is it a friend? Maybe I should go look and see. No, he just automatically starts barking, and I imagine he's like, intruder, intruder. uh, that's because they can't help it. They're mechanical. They get stimulus. I think it goes from like perception to emotion, perception to emotion. You know, stimulus through the senses, perception, send the message straight to the emotional centers. Act, 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 act. And for the human, there's an intermediary that can be the go between. It could be the perception, and instead of straight to emotion, it can be thinking and then emotion, or at least thinking and then the mood, whether it's tranquil or disturbed by emotion.
On.
So, mhm.
I'm sorry. Finish your thought.
No, go ahead.
I remember what I was going to talk about.
Go ahead.
Remember how we were talking about movies and how you're able to like reason out when you watch a movie, you're able to reason out what's going to happen. And you can usually figure out the movie before, when you're like halfway through it.
Yes, we discussed one time that you and I seem to have a tendency to, when we watch movies with our families, we can already figure out what's going to happen based on the conditions we see present. And that's what we call reasoning out.
Yeah. And then sometimes like when we don't normally like me personally, I don't share these. I don't like to tell just anyone what's going to happen. I usually can figure it out halfway through the movie, and I'll usually tell only certain people that I know are comfortable with me sharing that information with them, because I know that they won't be irritated by it. They actually enjoy it, and
Mhm.
they like for example, my middle sister, she likes to hear my she likes to listen to my interpretations and my analysis of movies. And then she'll get excited and she'll be like, Joanna, what does that mean, Joanne, what's going to happen? Why did that happen, Joanne? Why?
Yeah.
So instead of relying on her own interpretations, she like wants to know what I'm thinking. And I just think that's, it's to me, it's funny, it's amusing, but she's amused by my input.
Mhm.
And the reason why I thought of this is because I'm using, I am not allowing the movie to like take to lead me by emotion through the emotions. I'm actually standing back and analyzing it and observing it in a rational, through a rational perspective. So I feel like uh, when I was at In and Out ordering my animal style French fries, I was observing humans through a rational perspective, and that reminds me of the Paticca Samupada.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. That's perfect. That's how we use Paticca Samupada in everyday life. This is not some answer to an exam that you got to study for and pass the exam. No, this is something you gotta. This is the telescope to which we see reality with, or the microscope to which we see reality with. This Paticca Samupada is the microscope, and we point it at every direction of reality. And that's what you're pointing it while you're waiting for your animal style fries. And if we can learn to point this microscope at our reality, any reality, especially when we're sad or angry or lustful, we can start to become conscious of what's happening. And so the plan was to go through this Paticca Samupada, because here we are hyping it up, but it's gonna probably take an episode on its own to go through, because it's nice and meaty. And Joanna, I think this week we took extra time before we did the podcast, just because of the presence of the necessary conditions, and also because we had an bonus episode with our friend Bhante Vihari Bhikkhu. And so to this, we pushed it off a little bit, and I think we're probably going to be like an hour and 40 minutes already. And so I think in 2 days, we'll drop another part. This will be part 1 of the talk. And then a couple of days, we can upload part 2. What do you think?
I think that sounds like a great idea.
Perfect. And everyone, if you made it this far, you're probably thinking these guys are crazy. But but it's because this is the deepest aspects that we're discussing. And we're reading Bhante Punnaji's magnum opus, which is this grand work describing the teaching from beginning to end. And we started at the end, literally. And it happened due to the presence of the necessary conditions. We didn't plan this out. We didn't plan 2 episodes, me dropping the 10 chains of existence casually, and then Joanna becoming curious about it, and then us devoting an episode to it. It happened due to the presence of the necessary conditions. And so we started at the end. And I think that's so interesting, because if anyone knows me, Joanna, or our friend Bhante Sanata Vihari Bhikkhu, they'll know that we are very curious about synchronicities. Also, our friend Diana, she loves synchronicities too. And the synchronicity here is, this podcast has a very Zen flavor just because of the influences. And in Zen, they don't take the gradual path. They start at the end. They go straight to awakening. That's why they call it the school of sudden awakening. So, maybe here we're giving you the deep Dhamma right away. And if you made it this far, maybe you see some value to what we're saying. So you might just suddenly awake. Who knows? But any last words, Joanna?
I am looking forward to the next episode, Juan. And thank you for your time. Thank you for explaining things. I know I can always rely on you to explain things in a very through a rational perspective. And yeah, thank you.
My pleasure. I always appreciate your questions. And I also appreciate your analysis of the Dhamma, because it's always very succinct, precise, accurate, and well thought out. So thank you as well. With that said, thank you everyone for listening thus far. Remember, there's a podcast in a few days. You'll see it as part 2. And as my great teacher, Alan Watts, used to say, let go and become liberated. So with that said, may you all be well, happy, comfortable, and peaceful. May you live with ease. Sukhi Hotu.
Become liberated. Become liberated. And when you find out, you see, that there isn't any way of forcing it, that for most people is the only way of getting them to stop forcing it. Because they won't believe when you tell them in the first instance, you've got to do this without forcing it. They'll say, well, it won't work, it won't happen, because I'm very unevolved. I'm just an ordinary human being. I'm just poor little me. And if I don't force it, nothing will happen. I have people who think that if they don't struggle and strain, they won't have a bowel movement, or whatever it is. They think they've got to do that work. in order to make it happen. In other words, all that is based on lack of faith, not trusting life. And to get people to trust life who don't trust it, you have to trick them. They won't jump into the water, so you have to throw them in. And if they are very unwilling to be thrown in, they're going to take diving lessons, you see, in which they're going to go all through, they're going to read books about diving, they're going to do all the preliminary exercises for diving, they're going to stand on the edge of the diving board and inquire whether there's the right posture until somebody comes up beside and kicks them in the butt. And they're in the water, and they're in the water. Become liberated. Become liberated. Become liberated. Become liberated. Become liberated. When you find out, you see, that there isn't any way of forcing it, that for most people is the only way of getting them to stop forcing it. Because they won't believe when you tell them in the first instance, you've got to do this without forcing it. They'll say, well, it won't work, it won't happen, because I'm very unevolved. I'm just an ordinary human being. I'm just poor little me. And if I don't force it, nothing will happen. I have people who think that if they don't struggle and strain, they won't have a bowel movement, or whatever it is. They think they've got to do that work in order to make it happen. In other words, all that is based on lack of faith, not trusting life. And to get people to trust life who don't trust it, you have to trick them. They won't jump into the water, so you have to throw them in. And if they are very unwilling to be thrown in, they're going to take diving lessons, you see, in which they're going to go all through, they're going to read books about diving, they're going to do all the preliminary exercises for diving, and they're going to stand on the edge of the diving board and inquire whether there's the right posture until somebody comes up beside and kicks them in the butt. And they're in the water, and they're in the water, and they're in the water. Become liberated, 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 liberated.